Do writers of novels and Hollywood screenplays know anything about biology, planetary science, or economics? I'm consistently puzzled by settings such as Tatooine or Arrakis. The Skywalker family were supposedly farmers, but we saw little or nothing that was green on that planet. It's like saying we're going to go raise corn in the Sahara, which I believe is where Star Wars was filmed. Even if they could carve out a meager existence there, why would they? Why would such a place be colonized in the first place when there are far more hospitable planets to live on? On Tatooine, we're to assume that bantas, those large, hairy, elephant-like sheep, were native. What do they eat? Elephants and other large grazers on Earth require vast amounts of food and water each day. After feeding the people, the bantas, sand people, and any other creatures left on the planet, what did they have to trade? Perhaps there was mining on Tatooine, not alluded to in the movie. We could apply the same questions to Arrakis, which also has a rather small population where humans are concerned. Regardless, they seem to have no problem raising a significant army. The peak predator there must be the sandworms, which reach a colossal 750 meters. What exactly do they feed on? There's no algae or any green vegetation at the bottom of the food chain. Is there some other source of sustenance we don't know about? They're said to eat smaller creatures, but what do those animals eat? In the movie Pitch Black, we have the planet M6-117, where our hero, Riddick, has been marooned. This is also a vast desert, or at least the part where he dwells. By some small miracle, he finds a very unenticing pool of water, a rather small one at that. This pool contains several nasty tentacled creatures and fish, which he partially survives on. Again, we're shown a large panoramic view where nothing is growing, yet later on, Riddick cannot take a step without some nasty varmint popping up out of the ground. Later, vast numbers of flying beasties plague Riddick and bounty hunters who show up to look for him. Again, the question is how can vast flocks of extraterrestrial carnivorous bats, each the size of a man, sustain themselves? The planet Vulcan is also an arid wasteland where nothing seems to grow, yet it is the home of a thriving, technologically advanced civilization possessing warp drive. Vulcan supposedly has wildlife, and the people there are vegetarians. Perhaps they grow all of their crops underground after ages of civil wars. Or maybe they use food replicators at every meal. Another planet from Star Trek we might wonder about is Ceti Alpha 5. This is the planet where Khan, played by Ricardo Montalban, and his band of genetically enhanced supermen were banished by Captain Kirk. This world was chosen, though albeit conditions were rugged and primitive, all resources needed for survival were there. In The Wrath of Khan, we're told that the planet mysteriously shifted in its orbit, causing a massive disruption of the climate. When the Reliant comes across them over a decade later, this world is a wasteland. The explanation leaves me curious as to how the planet itself reacted to being yanked from its original orbit without buckling the continental plates, causing massive tidal waves, fires, and killing every human on the planet, Superman or not. I'll use Star Trek one more time as a transition into the next mystery, technology in a dystopian future. In the film Star Trek First Contact, the politically correct generation just happens to time travel back to the place in time well known in future history. This is to the state of Montana, where the pioneer Zephram Cochrane has discovered warp technology. The strangest aspect of the story is that it takes place not long after World War III. The so-called civilization has been decimated. Cochrane and a band of survivors are living in the woods near a Minuteman missile silo. This begs the following questions. If a group of people are living in the woods wearing animal skins, then how is warp drive on anyone's priority list? With humanity bombed back into the Stone Age, then where is the industrial base needed to build warp coils, let alone add them to an ICBM, along with a life support system? I will admit that I have a general distaste for dystopian stories, though I have a soft spot for some, such as The Terminator. Other than the great floods after the Younger Dryas, the butchery of Genghis Khan, and the 14th century Black Plague, history indicates that such world ending scenarios have not occurred frequently since Homo sapiens have walked the earth. We are given a vision in The Terminator of a world where machines have taken over and waged an ugly war of extinction against humanity. From the movie, quote, we were this close to being wiped out. Again, the question is, what did the survivors eat? Where did they get gas and oil for their cars? Where was the technology base for human beings to build contraptions of their own? We should assume that the machines would destroy anything that might be of use to humans. The Terminator, in case many do not know, is actually a prequel to The Matrix, which has similar issues. In The Matrix, the machines were actually using human beings, so that may be the answer as to how their sustenance was provided. The food in The Matrix was certainly something that a logical, unfeeling machine would create. Neither are humans known for supplying quality food to slaves throughout history. At least in the Mad Max series, one question was answered. People managed to drill for and refine oil with enough junk cars sitting around that might have served for spare parts. The roads were still in surprisingly good shape. This may have had something to do with the fact that the setting was Australia, not California. Ammunition is another story. We could probably reinvent gunpowder and machine casings, but the percussion caps could be an issue. It would be interesting to have a post-apocalyptic movie where the guns were no more advanced than flintlocks and 18th century cannons. Though quite dated, the original Planet of the Apes is a favorite of mine. It is a racial theme that is truly the heart of the story. There is an air of plausibility about the premise for this movie. After a nuclear war and some mutations, perhaps chimpanzees and apes developed to an 18th century technology. In the movie, they used horses, farmed, and wove textiles. In the original, the guns were closer to 19th or 20th century, but by copying what was left over, it's plausible. They lost me in the sequels, however. In one movie, there were working automobiles over 1,000 years old. In another, an ICBM was worshipped by a human cult, fully fueled and ready to deploy. Returning to the desert planets, we have Abydos from Stargate 1994. Here again, there were no signs of crops or water, though there were large animals again. I loved this movie for about the first third to the first half, but then they lost me. Though it is also a trope of science fiction movies for aliens coming down to enslave humans. Why would they bother? If one has the technology for traveling between the stars, then you should already have figured out a more efficient means of mining than having downtrodden illiterates do it by hand. The entire Stargate series appears to be a replay of the same theme. Primitive humans are at the mercy of aliens, and only those from Earth who don't have spacecraft or high-tech weapons will save the day. We're not just limited to science fiction with regard to unlikely settings. I've seen many a Western where towns and settlers existed in places equally unviable. Monument Valley is an extremely picturesque place to film, but do we really believe it to be a destination of farmers? Farmers went to Kansas, Oregon, and California, not some godforsaken desert. Save for the Mormons, few were able to do this successfully. In the 20th century, it was Mormons primarily who brought water to the West. Just as amazing as the stark desert, glacial, or post-apocalyptic landscapes on screen is the amount of preparations made by our heroes. If you watch closely, you often see one or more people head out on horseback or on foot, carrying little or nothing in the way of supplies. Yet when they set up camp, they have plenty to eat and don't die of hypothermia before morning. Horses need forage and water, as do banthas, I'm pretty sure. Fires and people need fuel. Often these treks continue for days, going deeper and deeper into dangerous country. The directors of these productions either think we're too dumb to notice or are very willing to suspend our disbelief for the sake of entertainment. In the defense of writers, I sympathize with the difficulties in creating engaging, original stories. At the same time, one should do a modicum of research or thinking on settings with respect to plausibility. The setting is part of the story. We subtract from that by making it less believable.